Portland is up next. Oh, most likely player to be traded on Phoenix. I think it has to be Jalen Smith. They obliterated his trade value by not picking up his option. But at this point, if you're like, they should probably even waive him if they're not going to move him because, yeah, he's shown flashes, but is he going to help your, now that you have Biyombo in the fold, is he going to help your backup big rotation in the playoffs?
Yeah. I think it's Saric just because that's kind of the best way for you to get the salary accumulated that you'd need to like do anything. And he will not help you this year.
I guess if you get OKC involved, Landry Shamet isn't as big of an issue on the poison pill.
I didn't even think about him. That's a good one too. Yeah, they don't care. Give us all the poison.
Portland, buy, sell, or hold?
That's a seller to me. We've mentioned them several times as a team that's close enough to the tax line, and they'll be need to get under the tax because they're going to,
I think, right, or something.
Yeah, they're 3 million, and getting under will reset the repeater clock, and if they don't get under, they're going to be in repeater territory, and that's bad news bears. So that's one incentive. The other one, obviously, Nurkic and Covington are expiring. I think Portland's gonna basically be at the cap next year already without those two guys. So, like, you're already, and again, you're just gonna. What are you willing to spend on this team? Damian Lillard out possibly. I don't know if it's possible or probable anymore for the year. There's a good chance, and if they become sellers, that ratchets up the chances that he will stay out for the year. So I think, like at this point, you've got Ant Simons that you need to figure out what you're going to do with in terms of like, what are we going to pay him? Because it seems like he's kind of ready to be, your next wave guy. You've got Little, who I think is a keeper, but like almost everybody else I think should be on the table. And like, unless you're convinced that Dame and like your rebuilt support pieces, whatever that looks like, which you have to acquire with all these tax concerns, like looming over you, are going to contend next year, the year after, like, it's time, I think, to just pull the ripcord. So I think they're sellers for like every reason I can think of.
I have them as both because I think Jusuf Nurkic has played better lately, and the Blazers in general are perking up without Damian Lillard, so they should just trade him for cap relief. But Covington, Nurkic, look at moving them, but there seems to be this understanding that Damian Lillard isn't going anywhere there until he asks her out. And so if the plan is to continue trying to win with Dame, you need to buy. And I like Miles Turner there, and I like him even more now that maybe he doesn't play again this season because the tank is then still on. You keep your pick that's owed to Chicago. It's lottery protected. And then you reboot next year with Miles Turner as the centerpiece of your defense. And he's a player more so than Rocco or Larry Nance Jr. And I liked both of those trades at the time that they were made. And Larry Nance Jr. still, when he's healthy, he's really good. Miles Turner can actually sort of shape your defense, and the other two players aren't going to do that. So if you can get Miles Turner, or if you can just get players that are going to help you next year with Dame, you're still obligated to do that. But you also do have to sell because Nurkic and Covington are entering free agency. And also the Anthony Simons deal, you've already paid McCollum, Lillard, and Powell. How many dudes under 6'5" are you going to pay?
Well, that's the thing. I know it's rhetorical, but I think like it's starting to look like Simons makes sense as like the other one, of that group. So you might like McCollum, and I'm doing the thumb over my shoulder. This is also great podcasting as the get out of here. McCollum,
the YouTubers can see it. The YouTubers
perfect.
Can see it.
McCollum and Powell. Oh, that means they can see my dog picture up above that I'm pointing to now. If this gets clipped.
What's the dog's name?
I think that you made me think of something with respect to like they owe it to Lillard, or you didn't phrase it that way. But the idea is if you think you're going to contend with Lillard, you need to be a buyer. I guess I'm increasingly convinced that like that's not going to happen. So, I mean, I'm less optimistic that that's possible just because I think I saw the other day that since they made that conference finals in 2019, they're basically a 500 team. I mean, every team has their issues, their injuries, their, whatever, but there's not a lot of evidence to suggest that Lillard going forward is like a transformational, the guy that you build around, which sucks, but like it happens to everybody. It just doesn't last forever. And so with that as like not a certainty, but as a consideration, along with all the other stuff, that's why I'm a little more convinced that they should be sellers. But for sure, like the other thing is that I don't think it's clear yet if who's going to be making decisions, right? I think Joe Cronin took over. I don't know if he's lost the interim tag. It's possible that if it's not him, or if he gets some job security and like is there for sure as the head decision maker, he might be more willing to move Lillard, whether he asks out or not. Because I think just as a member of the old regime, it's a lot hard. It's very difficult to be the guy that like says Dame's got to go, or we're gonna decide and he's not. That's a tough look. So that gives you some juice as a buyer for sure. If he's going to be in charge, that's tough. But so yeah, that's interesting. I'm surprised. I thought we would agree they were for sure sellers, but you're making me reconsider a little bit, but not enough to change my mind entirely.
My guess would be they'll never be genuine contenders with Lillard, and that they missed their window, and it was with Neil O'Shea. He went with the medium-sized swings rather than making the bigger swings, where had you sort of spilled all the assets that you gave up for Norman Powell, Larry Nance, and Rocco into one, you could have rolled the dice on higher end players that had become available. I also think you probably should have. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the CJ McCollum, Damian Lillard backcourt, but if you really couldn't acquire that third guy to go with them, then yes, you should have traded CJ McCollum already. It's not an issue of that not working. It couldn't work in the context of you getting the players that you needed. So I would agree with you that I don't think they're ever going to be that legit title contender. I shouldn't say never, but the pathway there is exceedingly harder because of what they kind of burned in those medium-sized moves that are now, Nurkic might leave, Rocco might leave. You still have Larry Nance Jr. Now you're going to be boxed into paying Simons and restricted. I mean, there's not a ton of cap space, but guys who are good tend to get paid anyway. So I agree that it's hard, but I don't think they owe it to Lillard. I recorded a Blazers podcast with friend of the pod, Tower Bowen Biggs, a couple months ago, where I said, I would blow it all up. And if you still want to keep Lillard, just try and rebuild around Lillard then. And that would be fine with me. I still really like Norman Powell. I think I would do some pretty dirty things if I'm an opposing team and trying to get Norman Powell. Like he is really good. But if you believe that Damian Lillard, if you're of the mind, you're not moving Damian Lillard until Damian Lillard asks her out, and you don't think that's happening before next season, you need to act as if you're trying to compete then. And that would obligate you to be buyers, not to the point where you're dealing picks in 2027. You're not the Lakers, but you would be obligated to at least be opportunistic buying. You also do have to sell, though, because you're not paying all of your soon-to-be free agents. And so it's time to look at what you could get for them.
Yeah,